Hi, welcome to our panel on Moms and Social Good. As you just heard, I am Catherine Connors. I am indeed a former political scientist who actually specialized in the study of mothers in the family in the history of political philosophy and mothers in the family in the public sphere. So the place of mothers in making the world a better place is a topic that is very dear to my heart. I'm no longer in Ontario. I've recently relocated to New York City to take on the role as Babel.com's Director of Community and Social Good. We have an amazing panel of women, mothers, who are doing remarkable things to make the world a better place and to talk about how the experience of motherhood has informed and shaped and inspired them to want to make the world a better place. Immediately next to me, we have Heather Armstrong, who is the author and publisher of Deuce.com. She is perhaps the original mom blogger. She was certainly an inspiration to me. She single-handedly has provided support to countless, I was going to say thousands, but I'm sure it's hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of mothers struggling with postpartum depression. She was a support to me when I struggled with postpartum depression, and more recently has begun working with Christy Turlington and Every Mother Counts on the cause of global maternal health. Next to Heather is Christy Turlington, who has a long career, varied career as a model, a writer, a student, a documentary filmmaker, and now the founder of Every Mother Counts, which launched, I think, concurrently with the debut of your film. And which aims to support the promotion of global maternal health. Next to Christy, we have Alisa Stevenson, who, in her own words, is a stylist, television commentator, spokesperson, and consultant, and has the best line, "Fashion does not look good or feel good for her unless it's doing good." Alisa Stevenson works with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. She's a regular participant in ABC and Disney's Get Real With Your Dreams and holds styling seminars for inner city kids in New York City. Next to Mary Alice is Alisa Volkman, who's the co-founder of Babel.com and the mind and the heart behind the Mominations program, which is a celebration of extraordinary mothers, many of whom are here today and that you would recognize making a difference in the world, and also a celebration and promotion of everyday moms who are making an extraordinary difference in their own communities and around the world, and is a platform for the promotion of those mothers and the promotion of those causes. It almost seems like a cliche to say that mothers have a unique interest in making the world a better place. I mean, after all, we want to create a better future for our children. We want to create a wonderful world for our children. And so I don't think it's surprising when we look back over history and we see that many of the great social change movements have been inspired by, led by, founded by mothers. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was a mother. Mothers Against Drunk Driving was a movement of mothers. Most of the efforts we see around global maternal health are founded, promoted, and moved by mothers. We can go back even further into history and see that many of the great peace movements were triggered by mothers and moved by mothers. Veturia, who was the Roman mother of Coriolanus in ancient Rome, single-handedly stopped a war with the Romans by pleading for peace. I think we could even say, Eve wasn't a mother when she left the Garden of Eden, but I'd like to think that, she wanted a future for her children that wasn't in that, oppressive and boring old garden. So that mothers have been agents for change, for the length of human history. And what we want to talk about today, is how we're making a difference now, and more importantly, what it is about motherhood that seems to lend itself to wanting to make a difference, to being able to make a difference, what unique skills, what unique networks, what unique abilities we have as mothers that contribute to the cause of making the world a better place. So I want to ask the panel generally, first of all, to speak a little bit about what has moved you to make social good, something that you put at the center of your lives, or what it is about your experience of motherhood in particular that has caused you to take causes to your heart and to act on them.
Well, I found success through a blog, which is a dirty word in many circles. And I actually gained prominence when I started writing about postpartum depression, and I realized that there was a community of women who were looking to me as their friend, even though we're separated by a monitor. They were looking to me as a friend to help them feel less alone. And so with postpartum depression, I felt a need to speak out about it. And then Ricky Lake actually changed my life with the movie that she made, The Business of Being Born, and I did research and studied with my second child to have a natural childbirth, and in doing so realized just how backwards medicine can be in this country, and that there are still attitudes in this country about childbirth that are even more backwards than in some developing countries. And so when Christy brought her movie to Salt Lake City and she invited me to come along, I thought, this is a great way for me to bring this story to these mothers who are in my audience, and for me to give her my community and give her the ear of my community. And that's what I wanted to do, is to bring her to them.
And it is a uniquely passionate and devoted
It's a
community.
very devoted community. I really do credit my community with saving my life, because I really did reach a point of complete desperation after my first child was born. And it was my community who said, we're going to be here when you get back from the hospital, and you need to take care of yourself, and we'll always, listen to what you have to say.
A powerful, powerful community to draw on, to support causes like
Right.
Christy's. Christy, tell us a little bit more about Every Mother Counts and everything that you've been doing.
Sure. Well, I from a very early age, because I started working as a teenager, really. I came to New York when I was 15 years old, and I didn't really have the chance really to, kind of figure out who I wanted to be and what did I want to do. I sort of fell into a career, and all through that period of time, really my first 10 years of my career, I was thinking, okay, well, this isn't going to last forever, and what is it that I want to do? So at a certain point, I made the choice to stop and go back to school as an adult. And from that point onward, I started thinking about, okay, now I'm going to choose the kinds of things that I associate myself with, and I'm going to sort of take back control after being given such a kind of a blessed life in a way. Could be mixed with curses too sometimes, but honestly, a lot of opportunity. And so I thought, I can choose where to take these opportunities, and I can choose what kind of person I'm going to be. And so I explored a lot of different kinds of causes, always personal ones for me. My dad died from lung cancer 14 years ago, and I became an advocate around cessation and prevention of smoking, and I kind of learned about maternal health through that, actually. I learned that the time that I was advocating around that in the late 90s, there was the first Surgeon General report on women and tobacco in the late 90s. So we didn't know before then why our bodies are different and how we're affected in a much different way, and it showed me how vulnerable we are because of our reproductive health and the nature of our bodies. And so before I was a mom, I sort of became a maternal health advocate. But when I became a mom is really when I got to the place of where I'm working now, which is I had a complication after I delivered my daughter, who's almost 8. I had a great pregnancy, a great delivery, and then an hour or so later, I started to hemorrhage. And I didn't expect that to happen. I was really well informed and educated and had exactly the birth that I wanted, but I wasn't prepared for that part. I wasn't prepared for the after part. If you get there and if you get through it, that could happen. So I learned in a few months or so afterwards, as I was trying to understand what happened to me, that globally hundreds of thousands of women were dying from the exact same complication that I had endured and survived. And that made me, just the knowledge of that made me want to do more. And year and a half or so later, I traveled to El Salvador, which is where my mom is from, and I was pregnant with my second child, and it was there really that I had that moment of, if I had been in this community, this rural community in El Salvador when I gave birth to Grace, I would have died. And I felt like I needed, maybe it's survivor's guilt in a way, but I felt that I had something to say and that I could identify with that complication and so many other women. I knew that I would connect with other women in the world from becoming a mom, but it was really the complication that I think linked me to so many other women that I'll never know, I'll never meet, and that's what made me feel that I wanted to do something more. So the film came about as a way to connect women, women, friends of mine, my peers, to the issue and the places that I was going around the world and seeing and meeting these women. So a documentary film was like the best medium that I could think of to bring those stories as close as I could to, women here that might feel, that they've been lucky with their support and their access to healthcare and whatnot. But I think you don't know what you have until you see what people don't have, what so many people don't have. And so it was really just an awareness raising campaign that we started after the film was finished, and it's really to educate and support maternal and child health, but also to bring in new people, new new audiences that aren't aware of the development challenges, that aren't aware of, what happens in the global South versus Latin America versus, that every woman, I think, can identify with so many development issues, but through that very simple thing of becoming a mom, or the capacity to become a mom, and the idea that we have choices. We are able to space and time our children. We are able to, go to school, have a career, and then start a family. These are rights that so many women around the world don't enjoy. And so the campaign is really about sharing that and hopefully linking moms and girls and women around the world with one another.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that you raised there that I think are really important for us to come back to. And one is that the experience of motherhood, I think, almost universally connects us to an experience of vulnerability that we haven't had before. That however strong we imagine we are, however self-sufficient, independent, and powerful we think we are, when you become a mom, you experience vulnerability in a way that I think you can't express. And that takes us to the second point that, again, I want us to come back to, which is that vulnerability opens us up to the possibility of connections that we haven't necessarily otherwise pursued in our lives. That the experience of being a mother gives us a powerful point, a very, very personal, emotional connection to other moms, because if nothing else, we all recognize what it feels like to be a mom, what it feels like to love our children, what it feels like to want to be around for our children, and to want our children to be around for us. But we'll come back to those. Mary Alice, you told me before the panel that you were, that your experience of moving into social good and becoming a mom was sort of a question of, wow, you became a mom, and then it was like, well, when am I going to have time for this now?
Well, I had changed my life dramatically, when I hit 40, basically, a little bit younger than that. And I had achieved success in fashion and was, so grateful for all the time I put into that industry. But somehow it just wasn't enough for me, the superficiality of certain aspects of it. It was the thing that gave me, such a beautiful life. It was my bliss in every way and still is, but there was a shallowness to it for me, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And so actually Oprah, I had an O moment. I just gotten back from the shows in Milan and Paris, and I was unpacking. I turned on the TV, and Oprah was there, and she said, use your bliss to make a difference for the world, in that Oprah beautiful, big, bold way. And it was just like, one of those things where like, okay. And so I resigned from my post at that time and started working as a national fashion ambassador for Make-A-Wish, and incorporating all the things that I like to do that uses fashion and beauty to help people to work with self-esteem and all of those things. And it was actually when my son was born years later that it was the first time I was like, my mom said to me, well, you just went and spoke to a room full of teens on, feeling good about yourself, but you could have spent the day with your son. So here was the very thing that I was so excited and had dramatically changed my life to do. And then when I gave birth to my son, who is obviously the love of my life, all of a sudden I was like, those things that have made me feel so good about everything, is she right? And you know what? She is. And I realized, but I also know that the more time I give to my son that's quality and focused, that's good. And I ask myself, I'm like, you know what? I'm a great mom. And it's just about finding balance like everything else. And I'll never be able to not work with all of these organizations, and that he will be so proud of me. And now at 5.5, mommy gets her fashion on to help people. He doesn't really, he comes along now at 5.5 and experiences that. So I think I finally found a happy medium, but I was actually taken aback, like, when I had my son, like, am I still going to be able to do this? It was almost the opposite reaction. And now I finally kind of found my way. But
it's another really important point, the moment that we get to when and this isn't just mothers, obviously, but fathers as well, even aunts, grandparents, that part of, I think, the inspiration for wanting to make a difference in the world is, not just to make the world a better place for our children, not just because we're connecting with other parents, but because we want to be good role models, right?
Exactly.
Part of it is wanting our children to be proud of us for the right reasons, and I think it's part of creating an environment for our children in which we're modeling good global citizenship, good local citizenship, and just, good humanity, by putting our efforts, into these areas. I think there's this is a beautiful segue into Mama Nations, and Alisa, I'd love for you to explain a bit about what Mama Nations is, but the setup here, is that, Mama Nations, in addition to celebrating extraordinary women making a difference, Ariana Huffington is on the list, Donna Karan is on the list, Heather Armstrong is on the list, Christy was one of our panelists, that it also, and more importantly, I think, celebrates ordinary moms who are making differences in ways that we usually don't see in the public eye, but within their communities and within their neighborhoods and within their own families. They're really, they're doing a lot of things to make a difference, both for, in the name of helping their children and also just to be good role models for their children. So Lisa, tell us a bit more about that great cause.
Yeah, and that's really the spirit of it. I think similar to Heather, we started Babel really as a platform for moms to connect with other moms. After having my first child, I found it to be a very challenging, amazing, just so many kind of emotions all at once type of experience. And I think in those moments you want to connect with other women that have gone through this experience. So in the spirit of that, we launched Babel for moms, really to connect with other moms. And Mama Nations is a program that came out of it after Babel has grown. It's quite large now. We wanted to start a program and give a voice to other moms that really don't have a platform off which they can speak and really find funding for the causes they care about. So we launched Mama Nations that has two parts. The first part is really we wanted to highlight top moms around the world. You see a lot of lists like top entrepreneurs, top creative people, but we really felt like there was no kind of authoritative list dedicated to the top 100 moms around the world in various categories. And we really wanted to highlight their work, the fact that they're balancing motherhood and have these amazing careers and are really trying to make the world a better place. So we worked really hard on that list, and then we really turned it back to our audience, and we then asked them to nominate women in their community, moms in their community that were doing extraordinary things, that didn't really have a platform, were seeking funding, were really pushing things forward, and really could benefit from some larger platform off which to speak. And it's been incredible. Our readers have nominated over 250 moms. The top 3 finalists have over 20,000 votes, and it's just become a huge kind of social media success in terms of people sharing stories. And I think that's what's really come out of it is, I think when you learn about stories and people in need, you're not surprised to find that moms really rally around other moms in need and really push their causes forward. So it's been an extraordinary program, and the stories are just amazing. From trying to find funding for diseases to raising money for inner city schools, digging wells in Uganda for underprivileged kids. So.
Yeah, and it goes. I mean, what you can see in Mama Nations in particular, the part of Mama Nations that is the nominations of ordinary moms doing extraordinary things, is this tremendous energy that's come up around it of women, of not just women, but dads, of readers, of really throwing their support behind these stories. And I think it speaks to that point of connection that arguably, I wouldn't want to say it too emphatically, but I think is something that we all experience as mothers. Christy, you were talking about that vulnerability, and that feeling of sort of kinship and empathy with other mothers. And Heather, you've spoken about it too, both in the terms of the experience of sharing stories around postpartum depression and connecting with your readership. But I'd love for us to talk a little bit more about that in particular, about how it is and why it is that we seem to form unique connections as moms, and not just connections that help us as mothers, but connections that seem to be really kind of primed for spreading messages further into generating activity. I mean, why do you think that is?
I know that for me, having a child, and I've been criticized for comparing it this way, but those first 6 months of my first child's life, it was like going through a war. It was a bomb went off in our life, and we sort of had to piece it all back together. And I think you finally realize, oh, so this is what those parents, my mom went through this, and every parent that I see from now on, I know that they had that sleepless night, and then they had that night where their child had a fever and they were worried. Every single parent has gone through this experience before, and it brought me so much closer to other human beings, and it made me so much more empathetic with other human beings and so much less judgmental about, my kid was not going to be the one that made the mess, and now I'm proud of the mess, and I actually, for me, like being on a plane where there's a screaming child, my instinct is not to complain. It's I want to go help that parent, or I want to go, thank God it's not mine. and so there's just there's an automatic connection that I feel with other human beings simply because I went through that war that they've been through.
Christy?
Yeah, I could totally relate to that. I mean, the screaming child on the plane, I will say, like, do you want somebody to hold your child when you go to the bathroom? Do you need help with your luggage? Anything like that. And I think it's really moms need moms, right? So more than anybody else, a man might not understand what it's like to be on an all-night plane with your 3 kids, but other women do. And if you have one child, you know, oh my God, I could never do it with 3 children. You know, it's an understanding of just how hard it is, or you know what those milestones are that are like the first time you do anything that seem like, oh my God, I'm a terrible mom, this is the worst. And then somebody says, oh, you know, it gets easier, or if you just do this next time. And there's a sense of people wanting to pitch in and help. There is also the side of people who want to critique, and they want to, you know, oh, you should really do this, and is your child wearing enough clothes, and all of those things that make you feel bad. But there are more, I would say, people who want to say, oh, yeah, let me just help you to make it easier for you, because I didn't know that when I went through this experience. So that is a really beautiful thing about it.
It's interesting that spirit of the critique is interesting, because I think it's something that often when the culture of motherhood, especially as it exists in the global north, is discussed, certainly in popular culture, it's around judgmental moms, you know, and different styles of parenting and the privilege of moms and that kind of thing. But I would argue that even the critiquey stuff is still motivated from a space of, I understand how to do this and I want to share it with you, right? I mean, it's obviously the most, you know, the happiest spin to put on that, but I think that it still comes out of that shared experience, you know, and that when we get critical and judgmental of each other, you know, and mothers can be incredibly critical and judgmental of each other as human beings can, that it comes out of a place of shared experience and of, in some ways, even though it might feel uncomfortable at times, of wanting to help. The other aspect that we sort of started touching on, you know, with Mary Alice, you know, was this, you know, the elements of motherhood that I think enhance our abilities to do this kind of work, or however we're conceiving, you know, the work of social good or changing the world. And that's just that willingness to roll up your sleeves and get into it. You know, we wipe bombs. You know, we've been barfed on at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, we clean up other people's messes as just part of our daily lives. You know, so do you think that there's that aspect of it, once you've been thrown into the experience of motherhood, and you know, even if you have tons of household help, you know, you don't get away from the wiping of the bum. Okay. You know, that there's still that work that we have to do, you know, both the grunt work and then the emotional work. And do you think that plays a part in, you know, us being inspired and motivated and active in this space?
I think that plays a part in giving people are able to connect to you more when they understand that. As a fashion and beauty expert, you know, when I became a mother and I could actually go one-on-one with someone in the dressing room, it didn't really matter who it was. It could be a, you know, big, huge actress, it could be a supermodel. But the fact that I had gone through, you know, what it feels like to be a mom and had all of those challenges, somehow for me helped them to take me more seriously. And it was as if I said, like, I then was able to give them permission, you know, and these are usually people that are moms that I'm talking about, other moms, that somehow that I could then give them permission to get their glam on. I could give them permission to be yummy, because I knew that it's not yummy all the time at home, and that that they were allowed to be beautiful, and it was okay, and it didn't make them less powerful, it didn't make them less authoritative, that they could be a serious, great, good career woman, mommy, and look good at the same time. And it wasn't until I became a mom that they're like, oh, you're a mom, and then they wanted to share stories as we were kind of glamming them up, or when I was speaking to people about it. So I realized that the tribe of mommyhood actually has helped me in my fashion career in a big way, because it brought that connectedness in which you spoke about.
And we really see that, you know, coming back to Mominations, you know, and to Babel, you know, that tribe of moms really at work, you know, in the ordinary moms, nominees who are being promoted, you know, not just, it's really quite something to see the stories of ordinary moms who are making a difference in different areas of their lives, either pursuing cures to childhood diseases or again, building water wells in Uganda, that there's been this extraordinary show of support, from the mom community that seem to be connecting to the stories, and it's, on the one hand, Alisa and I were talking about this before the panel, on the one hand, there's something that seems very distant when you talk about the story of a mom who's lost her child. On the other, when you are a mom, you can understand exactly what that feeling is. You understand viscerally, what that mother's experience might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the experience of being a mom pulls from the same principles that I think push social causes forward. I think the level of understanding, patience, compassion, commitment, devotion, just tireless kind of efforts that we put into our children, I think is what we draw from in terms of pushing social good forward, and probably why I think we're really well primed to be those agents of social change. I think we not only kind of live that experience at home every day and obviously want a better world for our children, but I think we're heavily invested in kind of the hope of the future and the hope of these stories that I think these stories bring out, just wanting to help communities and mothers in need. And so I think it draws from the same principles, which for me, it makes it very easy to kind of bridge the two together.
I would also add, though, that it's not that I wasn't an empathetic person or a compassionate person before becoming a mom, and I think that's
very
important for people who are moms. It's important, but you know what it does is it sort of tests, it proves to you that you have the capacity, an unlimited capacity to do more than you ever thought. So you're exhausted and you're sleep deprived, and I mean, it was a big challenge to go from one child to two children, and you have three, to think like, how are we gonna love this one as much? It teaches you that there's more, there's always more. You have this unlimited potential. And so I think that's what it's taught me the most, is the capacity. It's like, no matter how overwhelmed I am, I know because I'm a mom that I can do more than I actually think I can. It's just, you just do. You endure, and that's just, you just do. You know that you've tested your body that far, and that you've had to do so much for others.
It's as close as you're ever going to get to feeling like a superhero. If it's not quite feeling like a superhero, it's as close as I think, mortals get to
focus you in. There's something about that little face looking at you. It focuses you in, all of the stuff that's going out before you have a child, all the opportunity that you have out there. It does kind of make you, at least for me it did, it made me to prioritize where I wanted to put my energy, and when it wasn't right there with my son, prioritize my entire life.
I remember I called my sister when my oldest was about 2, and I said, I really, really need to apologize to you, because I used to call your kids the biggest brats behind your back, and I hated being around them because you didn't discipline them the right way. And I think having children it made me realize I have so much to learn, and so if I had that much to learn in being a parent, there's so much more I have to learn about everything else. And so for me, becoming a parent made me want to study more about everything, and makes me want to help others learn more. Others need to realize that there's more to learn about it.
Parenthood makes you humble in a way that nothing else does. Yeah. I think, Christy, your point leads to another point that I really wanted us to talk about, and that's whether we do ourselves a disservice in any way by framing this as a discussion about moms and social good. There's a long-standing tradition, in the Western philosophical and literary tradition in particular, of the argument that really moms are best serve their communities by raising their children, right? That every amount of energy that you're not putting into raising your children, Rousseau argued this famously in his Emile, which is one of the first works on parenting, mothers should be home nurturing their children, leave the other work to everyone else. And I think there's an argument to be made that I don't personally agree with, but I'd love for us to discuss, that there's two possibilities of things going on here. One is that we're painting ourselves into the corner of moms as nurturers, that moms are uniquely nurturing, that moms are uniquely caregiving, that moms are uniquely, inclined and suited to cleaning up messes, right? And then the other is to the question of how do we manage all of this? So, in the first case, what do we think of that, this idea? Are we painting ourselves into a bit of a corner with this, wow, we're so connected and we nurture and we empathize and we love? Or should we just be celebrating that and owning that as just a wonderful part of motherhood and going, yeah, nurturers?
I do think we can do, I think we can, I still haven't given up with the hope that we can do it all and we can have it all. I think there is something to do with sequencing, that you have to find the right balance in your life, and it, you know, sometimes you can be more of a sort of stay-at-home or like one child at a time kind of mom than you can at other times, and it depends on what your life is like too. I mean, I happen to have a partner that's very involved, and so that allows me the freedom to step away and travel the world and be able to give some of that nurturing that I have in excess of to other children and other women. Maybe I wouldn't feel as much if I could do that as much or leave as much if I didn't have him to do that when I was going away. So it's kind of a weird balance, but I think we can do both. I think we don't live in a time where, you know, we don't have that sort of village lifestyle that I so envy when I travel the world, which is that, you know, we would all be helping raise each other's kids. And so it's not that each individual mom is only looking at her own children. She's looking at her children and the kids next door, and we're doing that for each other. We don't have that in the same way because we're sort of so separated from our families. And I have a sister that just finally moved here after so many years of my living in New York, and I'm so excited to share that with my real sister. But you find other people who can sort of help you do that, and I've found that as a mom. There's other people that I can kind of count on, and that they can count on me when we're not able to do it all, because we have interests and we have careers and we have, you know, a lot that we need to do for ourselves. And I do think that we need to, mommy has to come first at some point, because if she doesn't, then everything else falls apart. So it's hard to allow ourselves to admit that mommy has to come first.
Yeah.
But it really, if we don't have our health, our kids, nothing's going to get done. We're not of service to anyone if we don't have that. So we have to make sure that we're healthy and that we take care of ourselves. And then, you know, your mental health is so important. And so being able to feel that you have an expression of who you are, and that you can actually evolve and change and step aside or step out of your home so that you can actually, you know, appreciate it and want to come back to it from time to time. That's important too. At least it is for me. I think the guilt stuff that I think a lot of moms carry is it's heavy baggage, and I don't think it's conducive to anybody in the equation.
It's not really conducive to their life as adults either, because it's a different time now. So would my son really be as proud of me if mommy just stayed home 24/7 and just took care of him? I don't think so. I think my son will be proud of me because I'm a single mom who works her butt off, who also tries to do good in the world. It's a different model for them as adults. You know, it's a different time for how they'll perceive women, different from how my mom was perceived even.
But do you think that we're in some respects creating a new kind of super mom, right? That, you know, the mom who not only takes care of her kids, loves her children, is raising great children, you know, has a thriving career and is out there changing the world. I mean, you know, you see, you know, Angelina Jolie and all the work that she does with the UN, and go, my goodness, I cannot live up to that.
It's good for people to express the fragility of it, and because it's not easy, and things do fall down, and you do make mistakes, and so and not everyone has everything. So I think if you can express the humanity of the aspect of being mom as world changer, and you know, I'm a single mom. I mean, I don't have a partner. I don't know how I could also be a wife and a career girl and a good mom. Alisa might have the answer because she is. But I think it's important to say, like, hey, you know, sometimes I'm not the best at this or that. But I do think the mommy thing somehow, like, you can be maybe not such a good girlfriend every now and then, not such a good wife every now and then, not kick-ass at work all the time, but you really should try to be the best mommy you can be. I think we all feel that pressure.
Well, I think when you say are we building a new supermom, you know, I was raised in a very conservative Mormon household and was brought up to believe that being a stay-at-home mom was the ultimate goal of a woman. And when I married I left the church, but when I got married to my husband, I wanted to stay home with my child. And 18 months into it, I realized this is not what I want to do. This is not at all how I want to continue living my life. And had the privilege of being able to make a choice to say, well, I'd like to start working. I look at my sister, who has, for the last 20 years, raised all 5 of her children, the last 2 being twins. And I look at her as a super mom because she has been there every single day of those children's lives. And she is the one who does the pickup. She is the one who does the drop-off. She has done all of it, where I've had an assistant who helps me sometimes go to the grocery store, or I have a nanny who helps me from time to time. But my sister has been there 24/7 for the last 20 years. So she could look at me and say, I don't know how my sister, travels, twice a month. And I look at her and I'm like, I don't know how you did that for the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really, really important. And again, I think Mama Nations is a tremendous example of seeing that other side, right? I have a sister who's a single mom of 3 kids, one of whom is terminally ill. And she blows my mind, the work that she does just in her daily life, in going to work, keeping a roof over their heads, advocating on her son's behalf. And we see a lot of exactly those stories, in Mama Nations of, just so many women that this is just their daily life. We can celebrate the 100 top moms changing the world. We can talk about the stuff that we're doing, and the platforms we have. But there are moms all over North America, all over the world, who just in their daily lives are living out social good just in the act of their motherhood. Didn't you find that in the Mama Niece stories?
Yeah, absolutely. And the stories have been incredible. And I think to Chrissy's point, that I think you do discover what you're capable of in becoming a mother. And I think just through these stories, and I think through all of our own stories, just what we're capable of is extraordinary. And obviously, I think we've come a long way in terms of having choices today. I think, generations ago, women didn't really have choices. But now we're faced with so many options. So it's amazing that we can kind of grab those options and still find a way to balance it. But for myself personally, I think I'm a better mom being able to kind of step outside of just being a mom at home, and have different places for my mind to work. And I think I'm able to come home and kind of share what I'm learning out in the world with my children. And hopefully the quality time I spend with them then is more quality versus survival. But there's definitely survival involved too. But
yeah. I mean, the other thing I'd like to come back to is this question of, when we're talking about a discourse of mothers as unique agents of social change and social good, that there is the temptation to fall into the language of nurturing, caring, empathy, and those sort of terms. And I want to talk a bit about whether we're pigeonholing ourselves when we speak about the motherhood experience in those terms, or whether we're missing something, or whether that's just something we need to own and celebrate. When I was in Lesotho last year with the United Nations Global Fund, visiting prenatal clinics and talking to women who were both fighting their own battles against HIV and also fighting battles on behalf of their communities, it struck me that it was coming from a place of nurture, of wanting to care for themselves and their future children, but also wanting to just really fight on behalf of their communities. There was a beyond nurture element that was just really kind of, it was really powerful. That was really I need to fight. I need to be a warrior at this point. To what extent do you think we need to sort of pull more of that, into the conversation about moms and social change, while retaining the power of nurturing and caregiving, and bringing in that sort of warrior aspect? Christy, I'm sure you have stuff that you can say to that.
Well, I just sort of think about, on all my global travels, I think about how there are so many things, rights in particular, and access to services that not everybody has here either, but the disparities are just unbelievable. And so because we have choices and we have options, I feel that I don't feel comfortable knowing that not every woman, not every mother has those options. And I feel until every woman has them, there's a big fight to be fought, and we need a lot of people, so we want all of you to join us. It's just not fair. It's not enough that I have my health and I have my children's health, and that we're comfortable, and that we have that we're okay. It's I want every woman to have that experience, and I want every woman to have a sense of that there are options and there are choices, and choices and options just don't exist on the scale that they really should. And so it's really that it's rights. In this country, and obviously in Canada too, the suffrage movement, it wasn't that long ago. There's so much about it that's become very precarious in the last year, that so many of us in our age group, we don't remember what it was like to fight for certain rights. And I am reminded of that in every travel that I do, and it makes me feel like that's a fight that needs to be fought and continue to be fought. And so to share those stories and to share, you know what? We've made it so far, but we haven't gotten there, and we're not going to get there until we're all in it together.
Yeah, I mean, so would you say that there's, in sort of moving us around the language of, of nurturing and caring, because obviously that's at the core of it, that there is this, perhaps even a need to get angry about it. I mean, Elizabeth Cady Stanton was angry, right? She wasn't just off, all us women, shucks, let's do something. It was, it was fueled by, a really quite intense emotional energy. Do we really need to be working on that? Or do we not, do we do enough of that?
You mean get angry, get more angry.
Yeah, about the things that we're fighting for the rights of mothers around the world, fighting for a certain standard of global maternal health, fighting for, for services for women struggling with postpartum depression, fighting for cures for diseases, and fighting for rights and access and all those things. Do we need to be angrier about it? Do we need to be less mom about it and get more to the count of 3 mom who's going,
More mama bear.
more mama bear?
Yeah. I think we like to tiptoe around. I think what you're getting at is like, is it feminist for us to call ourselves nurturers and to say that
Yes.
this is a part of being motherhood, is that we're nurturers, that we're natural nurturers? And I think part of being a woman, part of the nature of being a woman, for many women at least, is the tendency to connect with people. Mm-hmm. That's how our relationships are about connection and commonality. And really, really getting inside of each other in terms of relationship-wise. And so when we take that to the level of motherhood, that just multiplies all of that by, just exponentially. And so I wouldn't shy away from the fact that, we're nurturers. And by the fact that we're nurturers, that compels us more to want to equal the playing field for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, I really feel compelled now, almost on a weekly basis, to remind my readers, a lot of them women who are pregnant, in many parts of the world, pregnancy is potentially fatal, in a very serious way. And now that I know what I know and I've seen what I've seen, I really feel a responsibility to level the playing field for everyone.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing the M word into it, feminist. Because that, I mean, there's a cohort, struggling with my words, cohort of young feminists out there whose heads would explode at the very idea of this panel, that there's something, that the mother identity is something important to do with what we do to change the world. I mean, I can see the post on Jezebel now that they've put all their identities into their motherhood, and, oh gosh, when I become a mother, I don't want everything to be defined by my motherhood, when in fact, in some respects, that's what we're talking about. About how what we're doing is defined by our motherhood.
I don't think it's defined. I think
yes,
it's
fueled. Yes.
It's
Or
influenced
amplified by our motherhood. Yeah.
Do you want to say more about that, Alisa?
Oh, I was just going to say, no, I mean, I agree with them. And I think, as Heather was just saying, it's a commonality. I mean, it's a shared experience. I think it's really difficult as a mother to hear about another mother in need and it just not to tear at your kind of heartstrings and to not only remind yourself how grateful you are for what you have, but also our ability to do something about it and to help these people. In terms of educating them, funding programs that bring medical care into their communities. I think it kind of takes a woman to have experienced something extraordinary to be able to help another mother in need in a very similar kind of setup.
Should we be branching out beyond, mother-child family-related causes? I mean, there's a little, buzz the other week about the suggestion that women are starting too many mom-related businesses, that they're starting too many fashion. I think the direct quote was, too many fashion and baby businesses, like move on to something else. Do we pigeonhole ourselves? Do we do ourselves a disservice in any way by focusing on the causes that are related to mothers, children, and families? Or are we really just doing our best in doing that because it's focusing on the things that we're involved in and invested in, and so it's within the capability of our resources to focus on those things?
I think Christy from the work that I've seen her doing, there's not enough going into maternal health. There's not enough.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not barely touching the edge of it.
Yeah.
And sorry.
For me, I think you just take what you can do in your life and focus on that. And I don't really have time to think, or address the naysayers. I mean, on a blog, in your format, Heather, people interact with you more. But for me, it's just, I'm going to take whatever I can do to help as many people as I can come along for the ride. And if not, see you later. But
Yeah.
so, and I think the anger thing you brought up was a huge issue, because what I sense you were getting at is like, how do we move forward with social change as a mother? Is it a mother? Are we a warrior? Are we allowed to be angry? Are we allowed to tune into that? And I think I notice with a lot of my mommy friends that are doing such good in the world, they're smarter than anger. You know, they'll take that anger that they feel inside and they'll, you know, use it to fuel the connection that they have to make to move forward with their causes.
More passion than
I think
than
women
anger.
still aren't allowed to really, you know, kick up their heels and get super angry without being, we were talking about this earlier today, without being attacked back, you know, so, you know, it seems for many women, they take that anger and fuel it and, you know, give it to the world in more of a gentle way sometimes. Focused, strong, powerful, but.
I think that you're right, that there certainly are, that it can be more difficult, you know, as, not just as mothers, but as women to, you know, express that, you know, Heather called it rightly, I think, Mama Bear. You know, we sort of associate that now a little bit, you know, with Sarah Palin's and, you know, women in politics who.
God, no.
Yeah, you didn't mean to bring her into it. But it brings on a negative connotation, is my point often when we talk about the Mama Bear. We talk about, you know, the sort of aggressive woman, or the woman that's sort of seizing the light, you know, and making very strong statements, that there's often a bit of a negative connotation to it. And I know that I've been, you know, I've had feedback from my community when I've written about, especially about terminal illnesses in children and, you know, maternal transmission of HIV, that, you know, had people complain that I'm making them feel bad, right? And when I push back and say, no, you guys, we have to care about this, then, you know, people don't like me being uppity about it. They don't like me being angry about it, you know. So, you know, I asked to wonder to what extent there's a bit of a fight here for us to, you know, to be able to push ourselves into that space, to, you know, to kind of get a little bit aggressive about, you know, how we're pushing our causes forward and how we're doing this work.
Well, I think it's an interesting balance to you know, talk about. This is an urgent issue. Like, you know, look at the Horn of Africa right now. 30,000 children have died already. It barely makes a blip on the news anymore after the first month. And that's something that we should not be content with. The urgency versus, I think, to keep something urgent as opposed to, like, you know, the word anger. I think to remind people that this is now, this is like their lives every day that are on the line, and we need to do something about it. But I think our voices are incredibly powerful. The fact that we do share as much as we do, and that we do, you know, to commune and to have groups and to organize, to community organize. Nobody does that like women. So I think that there's such a strength on the part of what we are and what we can bring. And not to say that there's not a strength on the other side, it's just that we have a certain kind of ability that I think we can do quite easily, whether it's in the office, in the playground, at school, wherever it is, there's something that we can do to do that. And we do that, I mean, like, I know while I'm sitting here, I'm sure I've signed up for something at my kids' class tonight. You know, like, you just multitasking is just part of our nature too. So you're able to get stuff done and really sort of rally.
And every woman has a platform now with social media. Every woman has a platform, whether they choose to use it or not is you know, but every woman has a way in which they can voice their beliefs and how they want to make changes to the world, and that's exciting. It comes with responsibilities, which.
Well, we've certainly seen that with Mama Nations, that these are women who are not huge, don't have huge social media presences, but they have a social media presence, and they have communities, they have their neighborhoods, they have their families, they have their networks, they have their, you know, the women at their schools, and, you know, they really, I was going to say they really seem to know how to leverage that, but it's almost not even a, you know, something that they planned. It's just they have these communities, and these communities rally behind them, and so there is that platform, you know, already. And what we're seeing is just, you know, more and more use of it. And I think it's interesting because, I mean, Heather, obviously, you have a, you know, extraordinary platform for reaching women, you know, and a platform for sharing your own stories and the stories of other mothers. What would your advice be to a mom who doesn't have your platform, who wants to?
Well, I've tried to show in the past that I've conducted several social media experiments in the past just to prove to everybody that everyone does have a voice now, because somebody that I know on Twitter maybe only has 100 followers, but that those 100 followers have another 100 followers, have another 100 followers, and it just branches out like wildfire. And so messages spread very quickly now, which is what is so interesting about the space that I'm in, is that I can bring this story of, I went to Bangladesh with Christy in June, and I can bring back some stories and hear from people as far as Antarctica sending me an email going, I had no idea that this is still going on in the world. You know, someone in Antarctica heard my story from someone on Twitter. And so as small as your group of friends may be, social media, what that does, it amplifies it in a way that everyone can make a small difference, which makes a huge difference in the long run.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I mean, I think it's about sharing your story, and I think now we have so many outlets where we can do that, obviously with Facebook and Twitter. And I think it's amazing once you share your story, how many people, I think you'll be surprised, you know, are eager to learn about it and to listen and then willing to help. And I think that's what we found with the program we're running on Babbel with Mominations, is just we've given these women an opportunity to kind of share their stories, and it's been, you know, wonderful to watch the communities that immediately surround them and really rally them and want to help. And I think with all the work we're doing, I mean, going into countries and seeing what's happening, just kind of, you know, pulling the curtain aside and looking behind what's going on, you immediately find just so many people in need. And so I would encourage people to share their stories and to share other people's stories, because it is amazing how many, you know, how quickly the community will kind of fan out and come around you. So,
Christy, Mary Alice, what would you, to a mom that wants to really get behind a cause? You know?
I would agree with both Alisa and Heather that it is, I encourage people all the time to use your voice and to bring what it is that you have. And we all have our own set of unique skills that we can bring. And people have, you know, the voice is the easiest thing you can do because we all have them and because it's free, right? But there are other people who have resources, there are other people who have business ideas and products. And there are so many ways that people can engage, and, you know, not everyone can travel. Like Heather was like, okay, I'll come to Bangladesh. That's not an easy thing to be able to do. And not everyone would be able to do that. But, you know, luckily it was the right time and the right moment to say, like, yeah, you know, I do want to know what it's like for women who live so far away from where I am, to see what that's like. And it was an amazing, you know, it was an amazing experience to share.
As a direct result of that, one of my readers who paints portraits said that she was so moved by the stories that she wanted to paint 6 portraits and auction them off and then give all of the money to charity. That was her way. She said, well, I paint. I can't go to Bangladesh, but I can paint, and can we give you the proceeds of the money?
It's extraordinary what the community will do.
Yeah.
I the similar thing I was telling you both before the panel. You know, what people came together to when I failed to run a half marathon in honor of my nephew Tanner, who has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Bloggers came together and wore tutus and ran and raised money for muscular dystrophy just in his name, and also auctioned off tutus, created them. You know, and it just fell in because they saw a cause and a story that they related to, and did this extraordinary stuff because of the connection that we shared. And I think it's a thing that, you know, when I talk about, you know, do we need to work on the language of nurturing, I think we need to celebrate it and celebrate the connection, you know, and really say this is a powerful, powerful thing that we have, our ability and our willingness and even our need to connect with each other, you know, and that we need to really use that. And if that means going, hell yeah, you know, I'm a nurturing, caregiving mom and I'm going to change the world that way, you know, then we should. I want to take a last minute and a half just to thank Johnson & Johnson, you know, for sponsoring this panel, and to point out that Johnson & Johnson has actually developed an extraordinary tool called And You, which is a widget which is designed to help moms, ordinary moms who might not have the platforms of a Babbel or a Deuce, you know, or access to mainstream media to promote causes, their own causes, or causes that are of interest to them. You know, it's a widget that you can design, you know, with charitable organizations, nonprofits that you want to support. You know, they can live on blogs. You know, they're a very simple way of women being able to, you know, of anyone, of being able to show their support to a cause, of being able to donate funds to a cause, just with a click of a button. And I think it's fantastic because it demonstrates, you know, what we're all seeing is that moms are really a force. You know, that moms and their communities and their willingness and ability to use their communities, you know, are really, really, collectively an important agent of social change. The other thing I'd like to close by saying is that just, I think we should all remember that just as mothers, we're making an important difference, that if you raise good kids, you're raising the future world changers. And I'd like to congratulate us all just on that work that we do. So thank you so much, all of you, Alisa, Mary Alice, Christy, Heather, and thank you so much for joining us.